Episode 6. The Mental Body. The Mind Spirit. Section 1. Introduction. In a previous podcast episode, we discussed how to silence the mind. But we did not discuss what the mind was, and that is a very important question in order to understand what it is we are silencing. As stated in the previous episode, the mind is not brain, and this is why science fails in the modern era, because it seems to conflate the two into one. Science also believes that the brain creates consciousness. But there is also a conflation amongst other groups who think that the mind is somehow separate from the spirit, or somehow separate from the soul, or somehow separate from any other aspect of the self. Buddhism teaches the 5 aggregates, or parts, that make what we in the West call a soul or spirit or self. Those 5 aggregates are form, feeling, perception, volition, consciousness. And those 5 aggregates are true. Of those 5 aggregates, form and feeling are earthly experiences. They're 3-dimensional experiences. The remaining aggregates are perception, volition, and consciousness. But what is the mind? People use the word mind in many contexts. Mind your step. Mind your manners. To change one's mind. Having a one-track mind. The mind's eye. Do you mind? It's mind over matter. Yet, these uses are just colloquialisms. The word doesn't actually refer to any actual thing at all. So, how do we explain the mind? What does it consist of? Can we break it apart? Can we pry inside it? Only if you believe the mind to be the brain. But that rigid belief cannot account for the operation of the mind separate from the body. If we were to really investigate it, we'd discover there is no material thing we call the mind anywhere to be found. Let's break it down this way. We can say we are sitting in a chair. We also say we're eating an apple or driving a car. But we have not really thought that the word car or apple or chair are simply aggregate words for their smaller component parts. The apple has a seed. It has a core. It has a juicy portion. It has the skin. It has a stem. The car has a carburetor, an engine, a steering column, a frame, a body. A chair is made of wood and metal, often plastic and cloth. In the same way, the spirit mind is made of aggregate parts. And I specify spirit mind to refer to that full package. Listen to episode 5 on consciousness. Those aggregate parts are not a self or a person. They're simply 5 separate processes where the universal consciousness portrays itself as a spirit mind. So, is there a self? Well, of course, in a relative manner there is. But the self is these 5 aggregate parts. But where is mind in all of this? Is this notion of self somehow separate from the mind? Where can you find the mind? Is the mind the form or body? No. Is the mind the feeling? No. Is it perception? No. Is it the volition, which is awareness and will? No. Is it the consciousness? No. It is none of those individually, but is all of them together. The wood is not the chair, and the stem is not the apple. The frame is not the car. So, where is what we call mind? You won't find it anywhere. The consciousness is simply a stream of observation. Awareness is also a stream, a process, like movie clips moving very, very fast. Volition or will. That is the action, the actor, the thoughts. Perception merely perceives. Form is just the body, and feelings are definitely not the mind. You might be asking yourself, if the mind is only processes, why do I feel like I own it? Well, the question is valid, and it should be asked. But if you investigate deeply, you will find that you don't actually own any of it. Consciousness is not something you can control. You cannot choose to not observe, either the physical world or your thoughts. Awareness, perception, volition, and your willpower are all involuntary. You can't choose to not have willpower, and you can't choose to not perceive, even if just in your thoughts. You can't choose to not feel, and you cannot choose to not experience any phenomenon. And if you cannot control it, then you most certainly do not own it. So then, wherein is the mind that you own? Show me your mind, and I will show you how to control it. You cannot. There is no mind. There are only the processes. The word mind is a convenient convention, a label for the sum of all of its parts. Amongst these processes, at the top, is consciousness, which is simply there. Think of it as that which sees through your eyes. It is the continuing process that makes it all possible. It is source consciousness, as we had said before in the previous video, and it functions within these other processes and purposefully pretends it is an identity. Source consciousness wants to invent an identity for the sake of that experience. And you, wearing a mask of amnesia, are the experiencer. Section 2. Spirit mind. Since it is colloquial to refer to the mind as spirit, and because that is not quite accurate, we refer to it as spirit mind, just as we did in the previous video. This spirit mind is that which we think of as the inner self. We may think of it as the higher self, or the me beyond the body, but that's only partially correct. There is a you. There is a me. We do exist as identities, but as false identities. Most of us carry an identification card with our name, address, and other information on it. That ID card informs people how to distinguish us from others, but it does not say who you actually are. Are you your ID, your name, your body? Are you your vocation, your title, your activities? None of those are who you are. Show me what part of the brain is you exactly. Imagine that you grew up alone on an island. There is no identification for anyone to care about. What would it be like? Consider it for a moment. Pause. Perform a thought experiment. That is how it is going to be upon death of the body. And this sense of non-identity has been experienced many times within your own karmic cycle. But beyond death of the body, there is also the revelation, the understanding upon advancement of the soul, of the spirit mind, that the spirit mind is simply an energetic carrier, a process for source consciousness. We are all carriers of that light, carriers of that source consciousness. You have heard it said that we are a part of that source consciousness, and that eventually we will return to source. That is a way of looking at it, but it is not quite accurate. More accurately, we absolutely are source, but we are source with amnesia. Source has chosen amnesia for the purpose of the experience. And you are the experiencer for source, because you are source with amnesia. I have included this chart to help explain it better. Pause if necessary. Each one of us is what I call a unit of individualism. And that unit is a carrier of all of these processes that has amnesia and is source consciousness. Light consciousness creates the mind. Then the mind creates the ego self within the body, which is just a small portion of the mind entering what becomes the ego body. The brain is the hardware for the mind. The 5 senses belong to the body and are emulated in the mind upon death of the body. The spirit-mind connection is what we think of as the silver cord. When we, as what we call a self, choose a life on earth, that choice produces karma, which is action and reaction. But it is not something that we, as individuals, control fully, and that is because karma is also a process. The unit of individualism being born is merely these series of processes continuing in another body as water flows into a new channel. It is the same water. The source light that pierces through and is wrapped in the spirit mind is that which moves into the body. The remaining portion of the mind that is not inhabiting the body can be thought of as the higher self. But again, that's just another name for the spirit-mind processes. Upon the death of the body, the form and the feeling that the body experienced is then experienced by the spirit mind. After death of the body, the phenomena that are experienced by the spirit mind are purely illusory. So, what is experienced upon death is what the mind has projected. And yet it is a true manifestation, a form, although not like a form in the third dimension. Any experienced form is created in the same way that you create phenomena during dreams. Though not solid, they are real vibrational representations. This is not to say that the afterlife is a dream, because it is every bit as real as this experience is here. And this 3D experience is, as discussed in episode 5, not actually solid. It is real, but it is not ultimate reality. Although bodily death becomes a relational state of being, the unit of individualism is still the source. Consciousness experiencing spirit-mind through optional amnesia. It chooses to forget. The mind is universal consciousness not remembering that it is not an individual. The universal consciousness pierces into the mind, through the mind, and into the ego body. When the body is separated from the spirit mind, those three-dimensional feelings and forms are gone. What remains is what we might refer to as an echo of what was once on Earth in the three-dimensional space. That echo is simply those processes continuing on. This might be very difficult to accept, and it might be initially discouraging upon realizing that you are not an autonomous, sovereign, standalone self or identity. But I want you to look around you today, and when you encounter the person at the checkout line, at work, or while driving, just take a second to notice the source light in their eyes. That is eternal universal consciousness. And when you see that, it will make your day brighter, because then you will understand that everyone is source consciousness. The Heart Sutra reads, "Form is emptiness. Emptiness is form, because the five aggregates are empty of inherent existence. Form is literally nothing. No thing. So, then what is it your mind is perceiving if form is nothing? If it is just empty? All that you see, hear, feel, taste, and experience are phenomena. All phenomena are experienced locally. That local experience can be in 3 dimensions, or it can be in other dimensions, but it is nevertheless a localized experience. That localized experience is personal, it is subjective, and yet, there is no identity to perceive and experience that phenomenon. There is no actual person in the mind, and there is no mind in the person. The mind is the process, and that process is the mind, which continues. And as it continues experiencing. When we talk about advancing as a spirit, what we're really talking about is awakening to the notion that we are nothing more than a process center for the universal consciousness. We are universal consciousness. Section 3. Near-death experiences. Scientifically speaking, we are all vibrational states, and we all exist on the quantum level. This could be that which we refer to as the spirit realm. But the notion of spirit has always been an amorphous, nondescript concept. I spent many years just researching what spirit could be. Is it quantum? Is it light energy? Is it electromagnetism? Is it all of the above? None of the above? Is the mind also the spirit? You can be confidently sure that whatever spirit is, it's not physical. It has no substance. It has nothing you can touch with your 3-dimensional hands. It's not even smoke. What is an apparition? A ghost? Is spirit something interdimensional? How would we eventually, scientifically, come to understand spirit in its non-corporal form? Language tends to confound truth. The words we use, such as soul, spirit, mind, all point to the same manifestation, the same phenomena. And this is the great misunderstanding, that the mind is somehow something that is a part of self, or that the mind is something that is separate from soul. Again, we tend to conflate concepts, and throughout history, we have had several different identifiers, different terms, for what is beyond the physical self. The mind, however, is not that complicated actually. It is a conglomeration, an aggregate, a collection of all of its parts. It is consciousness, it is volition, it is perception, it is awareness, it is form and feeling. This is the mind. But you may recall from the previous episode that the mind is an amnesiac mask for consciousness. It is not a person. It is a pretense. The ultimate act of pretending by universal consciousness, which emits conscious existence through those processes and calls itself identity. So, for instance, in a near-death experience, a person can return with stories about floating as a ball of energy, or they can return with stories about meeting their grandmother or talking to their spiritual master, or they can return with stories about fanciful worlds, or they can return with stories about a life review or a council. And those are necessarily factual experiences, and they all have commonalities. They are all legitimate experiences. But an idea that is not widely considered by the Western world is that those processes we call the mind are the experiencer experiencing whatever manifestations or phenomena. And those phenomena, they are perceived and felt as real. There's nothing not real about meeting your dead mother during a near-death experience. But there is no actual person doing the meeting. because the identity of the mind is just the processes surrounding universal consciousness. Any unit of individualism is just the light, the universal consciousness, experiencing itself as a separate identity. You are universal consciousness doing the experiencing. Section 4. Summary. Even the notion of no self is illusory. There is not a no self. We of course do have a localized identity. We also have an identity interdimensionally in what we call the astral realm, or the interlife experience, or the spirit realm. However, that identity, as real as it may seem, is a temporary form, because it is an amnesiac. It has a mask of forgetfulness designed by universal consciousness to not remember. Again, the processes that surround the mind are what we refer to as spirit. That spirit mind is an amalgamation, a conglomerate, an aggregate for all the processes that go on around the consciousness. And when we choose to be born into a physical realm, that choice is due to karmic flow, which is the process of action and reaction that has causation and effect. The causation and effect are not rules, not judgment, but they merely are what creates our lives here on Earth. More will be discussed on this in the next video on ego body. We are not owners of what we call self, as we've already discussed. We do not control any of it, and we are not owners of the karmic flow of cause and effect. However, when we understand that we are the light of source consciousness surrounded by the processes that create mind, we realize that being born into a body in 3 dimensions is merely a result of cause and effect. It is choice, but propelled by karma, which literally means action. And when we are born, we are given a localized identity. We enter a brain that interprets all of it. And when we leave that body, we return to that original state. Section 5. Conclusion. This channel is not a religious channel, and it is not intended to make you feel good about what you already believe. It is also not intended to convince you of anything, or even teach you anything. It is intended for you to listen, study, consider, and think logically. If you would like to leave a comment saying that you understood, or that you did not understand, you would be assisting in my quest to convey this information properly. In the meantime, if you feel like it helped you, or if you feel like this is something that reached you, please hit like and think about subscribing, and select the notification bell. Those really do help this channel. And until the next time, when we speak about the ego body, be in meditation over these ideas. Replay it if you need to.